And I decided that I would pursue drawing underwater as opposed to taking photographs. There's something wonderful about taking photographs underwater, but there is a slight disconnect from what you're looking at. And so by making a drawing pad, I managed to construct, actually the first one was quite good, it worked. It was an old bit of Perspex with some waterproof paper and some graphite sticks. And I took it underwater and I couldn't believe it actually works. It was fantastic. And it went from there really. So I was invited, I got a phone call one day from one of the wildlife artists. And by this point I'd become an associate. And they said, why don't you come up to Scotland and work underwater? And I thought, oh, that sounds fantastic. What an opportunity, it was wonderful. And they said, we're working on a project called Hope Spot. Hope Spots are what they describe them as special places vital for the ocean's health, linked to the international organisation Mission Blue. And we have our first one in England, which is in Argyll, up in Scotland. And this is an image I took. I think that was actually taken at the top of the Hope Spot from Ardfern. I was trying to remember exactly where I was when I took this photo. It was quite overwhelming actually, because I had never been to this area in Scotland. I'd been to the Hebrides and Orkney, but this was all new to me, and it was really exciting. Camera, so I take two cameras, one for video, one for stills, and I'm clutching my drawing pad there, and that is also attached to the float. So when I get in, I have a means of swapping things, if you like. It is quite a hoo-ha, but it does work. This is me working underwater. The locks are quite shallow up there. It's very different from down here. The lock's probably only about 8 foot deep at the deepest point where we were. This is me with my line. Can you see the line is out taut there? It was at about a 6-knot current. We're in a place called the Rapids, and literally the water pours out of there, so you have to wedge yourself in. And the first day I went, they said, well, we don't wear fins because we don't want to damage the wildlife. There is so much wildlife there. The life up there is extraordinary, it's absolutely teeming, and you can just reach out and grab things if you wanted to. It was just blissful. And this is what we saw. We saw plumose anemones, and they're literally within hand's reach. These are anemones that you'd usually find in deeper water down south here, but up there, they're just everywhere on the rocks. Extraordinary. By the way, I'm not a marine biologist. I'm just an amateur at all this stuff, but yes, to be able to get this close, you know, to things just a hand's reach away. I love spiny starfish. Did you know they've got little claws? Can you see those tiny little, you know, it's only about this big, a spiny starfish, but between those crowns there, they have these little tiny pincers. It's just extraordinary. And that's when I got excited. These are called light bulb sea squirts. Aren't they great? And on that is a candy striped flatworm. And I didn't realise that it was feeding on them. It's its food. Yeah. You know, we're so precious in a way, because we only had, I think it was a week, but we were in the water for about 5 days out of those. So here I'm working at the side. And then we decided it'd be quite handy to put things in a tank. So we sort of took things in and out and made sure they went back in the place we found them. And we were looking at things like sticklebacks, and obviously we were picking the sort of easier stuff to get. But this was really useful, and there's Bruce there with his eyepiece, working out how on earth starfish work. And these are some of the sketches from those moments. And there are merle beds all over the lochs there in Scotland, and they're really fragile and precious. And at the end of this, we showed all our work we'd done up at the Mall Galleries at a show called The Natural Eye. And I was rung up the following year, would you like to come back? So, I don't know. And we'll pay you to teach. And I thought, well, brilliant, fantastic. It must be the first snorkelling residency that's been created, extraordinary. And they put out a call for any artist to apply. And I think they thought there'd be about 10 people maybe who'd apply for it, and I think they had nearly 40 people apply. And here they are getting ready to go in and draw. We went to a place called Dunmurich, which is at the end of Loch Sween. There's all these inlets, and we thought it would be safer to go in there to start with. It wasn't that deep, it was about, I think, 6-7 foot, and we thought we'd get used to people working underwater and see how they were with it. And they're amazing, they were all absolutely up for this. It was brilliant. The water wasn't that cold in September, it had kept the temperature up, and I think we measured it at one point, it was up to nearly 18 degrees, so it wasn't quite as horrible as we thought. And off they went. And what we'd done is we'd had some Zoom meetings where we'd gone through all the materials they'd need, and they made up their own boards. There were some really creative things. Someone had a surfboard on the second weekend with all their kit on top of it, and they kept sort of diving into it and getting extra things. And you can see here she's bought some oil pastels, and she was able to put some colour into her work. And we were all excited to see what people were doing. It was great. In fact, our first dive was in quite murky water, and because there were, I guess, about 15 of us kicking around, it ended up quite murky in the water, so this doesn't look very promising, but actually once you swam out into the clear water, it cleared up a lot. And we were seeing extraordinary wildlife in this area. It was new to me, and we came upon these creatures. Serpulid reef worms. These are absolutely exquisite. These little plumes up here are filter feeders, and they create they grow and they create their own little reef system. And this one was, I don't know, nearly a metre tall, and I swam down. This is where it was useful to have a weight belt, so I could swim down and take photos of it. They're very fragile. If there was any fishing going on or disturbance, these would just be broken away. You can see a little reef here, and we were absolutely obsessed with these. It's just wonderful. They're literally within an arm's reach, some of these. And you can see here the black brittle stars, which were ever present. There are literally millions of these.
So this was fresh water, not
this
seawater?
No, this is salt water. Salt water lochs. Yeah.
Okay.
And so we came out, we did similar. We got a tank and put creatures in there. So that was our lunchtime. And then I went back in, and it's finding stuff too. There was a lot of new stuff that I hadn't seen. These little worms are called horseshoe worms, and these are little sea squirts, but they're absolutely beautiful. This one. I have been aching to see one of these. This is called a gas mantle sea squirt. I was so excited when I found it, I couldn't believe it. It's just absolutely exquisite. It's a perfect gas mantle, isn't it? On my camera I have a strobe, and I'm able to flash a light onto the subject. You have to sort of tip it and tilt it. I've learnt to look in a different way now. I'm more observant, I would say, and I've slowed down, and you can literally just stay in one spot and watch things go by. And it's a much better way of working.
About the sounds that you were hearing, because here it looks so peaceful and quiet, but maybe actually it was really choppy or...
No, we were lucky. We had very calm conditions apart from one day at the end when it blew up a bit of a storm, but we were lucky. It was very quiet. All you could hear was each other, really. So you hear sort of flapping noises and bubbling, and it sounds a bit like bubbling farts and things, but there's a lot of funny sounds that go on in the water, especially when you've got a hood on. But you are muffled. When you wear a hood, you don't hear very much in the water. And this is the eggs. These are the eggs of something called a sea lemon, which is a sort of sea slug, which isn't very exciting looking, but we found a huge number of these up there, and these little ribbons contain about 1 million eggs, and they can be found attached to the kelp. And we get things like the 2-spot gobies, and these were very pink ones up there. They can be different colours down here, but I'd never seen them so pink as up there. And this is a shredded carrot sponge. A great name. I know, I love the names. So we had a day when the heavens opened, and we retreated. We were staying in a place called Te Vallic, which is a little coastal town up in Argyll, near Tainish. And we took over the village hall because we basically decided it was better to do this than stay in the water and just get cold. And we decided to work collaboratively on some pieces of artwork, which was great actually. And we had a musician in the corner playing some music. It was lovely. This was after lunch. We were all quite tired, but we were saying, well, you know, what a wonderful thing. We could get together and make art after having this amazing snorkel, and we could describe our work and work together. And that's me working on all the things I'd seen during the morning. And we just went in and worked over each other's work, and it was fantastic. And these pieces have travelled to other places where they've taken them into schools and on various trips out to other places to describe what's happening in the Hope Spot. And these are the finished pieces, and they're quite big. They're done, I think, 2 on canvas and 1 on paper. We're all quite pleased with ourselves after we'd done that. And then we had a film crew arrive on the last day, and they were making a piece for the One Show. So they came, and it was a team called Off the Fence, and they worked on the film My Octopus Teacher.
Oh, yes.
So they were really competent, and here they're interviewing Sarah, the tattoo artist. We had bets on who they'd ask. We knew it would be her. She was very glamorous and really great actually in the interview. And then we went back to the village hall, and there's Miranda with her drawing, and Paul here is teaching her how to make it beautiful. He's a really good watercolour artist, and they filmed all this. And then exhibitions. This is up at the Mall Galleries, and this is lovely because they dedicate an area up there just for sketches and field trips. And the lovely thing about being one of the wildlife artists is they go on these field trips, and they go, you know, they've been to India, to Africa. There was one that was in Bornholm that I missed because of lockdown, sadly. And then this trip to Scotland came up. And then they have this room dedicated for work done on field trips, and it's just the sketches, which are really nice to see. So you don't often go to a gallery and see sketchbooks and sketches, so it's a really nice thing to do. And that was the work last year, not this year, that I completed, and it was a mixture of sort of Hope Spot stuff, but it was mainly work that I'd done from down here in South Devon. And this is of Julia and I, and some of you might have heard of Julia Manning. She did a project about the decline of the eels, and our work was put together at the Mall this year, so we went up, and we only got to it on the last day sadly, but we did get there anyway. So, yes.
Can you say a bit more about the materials that you were drawing with?
Okay, yes, I can show you. In fact, I've got something here. Sorry to put the lights on. So this is my underwater drawing pad, and this is actually, that's a drawing that I did completely underwater. This was a trip out to South Milton on the 12th of October. And did you know there are seasons underwater? So I think we do, you know, it's a funny thing, you think, you know, it's obvious in a way, but it isn't until you start observing the details of what you see underwater. And kelp starts breaking down in the autumn, and the tops of the fronds disappear, and you end up with these extraordinary forests of half kelp. And then they get all these creatures on them, like you'll get the top shells sitting on them, and then you'll get blue-rayed limpets. So here I've added detail on here. So I'm using here waterproof paper, which is called Yupo, and I've got in here some graphite sticks, and I attach this to my buckle on my body, and then honestly, it gets in such a tangle. Yeah, I know, it gets a bit chaotic in the water, but it does work. And so I'll then work into areas of tone that I've recently started discovering, that you can use acrylic ink to paint layers onto the paper. And this one I've rolled with a bit of colour rather than having a white sheet of paper. And up on that bit there, that panel, those are all drawings done underwater, and some have been added to afterwards, and some haven't, so they've been done entirely underwater.
So you've added the colour underwater as well?
Some,
in cases.
on a couple of them I have. And
So what was the colour?
so we've used waxy crayons. Yeah, you can actually draw a bit. It does get chaotic because I had a string with all these little colours on. And then you get to a point where you can't cope. Because you're floating, you know, you're not pinned down on anything. So it is difficult. It is like madness.
Do you take photographs as well and draw photographs?
I do, but I prefer not to draw direct from photographs. Photographs, they're strange. There's almost too much detail. And it's very hard to pick out where to go from there.
Yeah.
You know, I look at a photo and think, oh, it's overwhelming. Whereas if you sketch, you get an essence of something.
Yeah.
And it may only be a few marks, but it's enough for me then to lead me into making some probably better images than if I just drew from the photograph.
Yeah.
In Scotland there was lots of stuff I'd never seen before, and it was all very new and kind of, yep, okay, how do I describe that? So then it's the thing of getting to understand a little bit about what I'm looking at, and then working with, for example, there's an image there I did of circular worms under the sea oak, and I was struggling to find where to place things, but it started coming together. The more I dive, I think the more, you know, comfortable I feel at looking at things and working away at describing it. Thank you for coming.